if you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. And I really feel very pleased today to feel that I was a part of a small group of people nearly 20 years ago that dare to dream and imagine things that are taking place in the last years. And really, the establishment of this center at Ben-Gurion University is a very important stage in kind of moving this process ahead. I once, many years ago, was a history teacher, so I want to say something about the history of the last 20 years. In 1995 was formed a group that I believe that most of you don't know, and it was called REP, Rethinking Higher Education Program. It was sponsored, co-sponsored by the Council for Higher Education, by the Israel Academy of Science. Dr. Meir Tzadok was here in the first session, but he apologized, he's not here. He was one of the dreamers, and there was a Van Leer Institute. I had the pleasure to be the director of this program. It lasted only 4 years, from 1995 to 1999. And part of the goals of this program was really to advance things that now Bologna process is trying to do. Collaboration with other countries, mobility, quality assurance, and you name it. One of the crises then in the Israeli higher education related to the master degree. And I'm not sure that everybody knows it, but Israel, when the Hebrew University and the Technion were established in 1924 and 1925, they had the exactly German system of a first degree that equals a master degree. 5 years, a first degree. And it was changed in 58, almost 41 years before Bologna process, the BAMA, the BAMA, because of American Anglo-Saxon influence, and they decided to cut the degree in the middle and to make it kind of BA and master. But in order to give a special substance to the master degree, it kind of, the research function of the master degree in the Israeli universities to this date is more than in most other countries over the world. And the statistics then in 1995 was that the average time to complete a master degree, the average time for those that nearly 50% dropped. So only 50% succeeded to finish masters. And the average time was nearly 5 years after a bachelor, a master degree. Oh, exactly. So this was part of the reason of establishing this group. And we assembled a very nice group of notable researchers on higher education, including Franz van Vught, who established CHEPS, in which you did your PhD, and he was then director of Twente University, and Ulrich Teichler from Germany, and Thorsten Ibon from Sweden, and Guy Nee from France, and late Martin Troll from United States, and Sheldon Rollbach, a very nice group in order to give substance to our decisions. And we succeeded somehow, because in the Council for Higher Education, they changed drastically the rules for taught masters. Now most of the masters in Israel, most of the students in Israel study in taught masters, not in the thesis masters. And some of the things still have to be done about a master because it takes in Israel much longer than 2 years, even up to this date. From 2003 to 2010, I had again the privilege to be part of the scientific committee of INA. Israel belongs, according to UNESCO, to Europe and North America. So INA is Europe and North America in the form of higher education research and knowledge. And some of the things that we did in these scientific committees that we met like 4 to 5 times in Paris, which was very nice, was to monitor what's happening in the Bologna process. And some of the people of our committees that I mentioned before even attended the signature of the Bologna process in June 1999. I was then very jealous of my colleagues that reported on various changes that take place in various countries. Elena Shepkova, we talked with Marek before, he knows her from the Czech Republic. She did the research on the Czech Republic and on Poland and Slovakia and others, various kind of configurations of the Bologna process. I didn't have anything to say about Israel. Bologna process, as Eric Zimmerman defined it in a symposium that we had in Haifa, I think a month ago, or something like that. It was out of the radar of the Israeli higher education. It was non-existent. Nobody knew what Bologna process was, didn't want to know what Bologna process is about. And I was kind of an observant. In the last 20 years, my field of study is comparative higher education. I learned a lot, I listened, but I didn't have any things to report to this committee about things that are happening in Israel. So I can say that in the last 2 years, things really have changed drastically. And what Shira Lanier tried to describe, I am part also of this higher education reform experts group, are really moving. And this center, again, Sharon, is a very important stage in this process. In order to keep the 20 minutes limit that you gave us, so I will jump on several things because you heard so much about the Bologna process. You
can steal some of the minutes that Shira didn't give.
Okay. I want just to say that I heard when I was in UNESCO many times saying that the Bologna process is not about unification and not about standardization, but about, the word was harmonization. And I know even in articles that I wrote with Ulrich Teichler and with Elena Shepkova about the changes that are taking place in the last decade in higher education system, we use the term harmonization. It wants to harmonize different systems, so we have many voices, but we want to coordinate them into a chorus. But still, the varieties, 47, as you mentioned, Joanna, 47 countries are signed now in the Bologna process. Each one interprets the Bologna process in a different way. So increase the harmonization, which is clearly clear for everybody, encourage collaboration, and enhance globalization. I will jump on several transparencies, but one I want to say. We live in a period which is tremendously interesting from the point of view of the development of higher education systems. And this I say from an academic point of view. For many years, hundreds of years, since the establishment of the first university in Bologna in 1099, universities were individual entities. Scholars traveled between countries. So the whole notion of a higher education system is quite a new notion that emerged in the second half of the 20th century. That there is a higher education system and that universities and other higher education institutions are not merely self-sustained entities, but are rather embedded in expectation, national cultures, regulatory frameworks, and cooperative and competitive linkages in any given countries. And because we also mentioned 47 countries, we don't speak on thousands of higher education institutions, but we speak on countries. In the academic cultures, which is a fascinating topic for me, and I wrote about it and I study it, the academic culture is something really unbelievable. Not only the French have a very complicated system, but also the British, mainly the English, have a very complicated system. And most people, for example, in Israel even, don't know when you speak about the honors degree, because in Israel, when you say honors degree, it means that it's kind of somebody that are distinct and like 5–10%, which is not the case in England at all, because most of the universities now grant honors degree, which is very different from what you say here. I heard from Marek about a diploma. When you say the term diploma in Israel, it means that that they are conducted in a framework of studies that do not lead to an academic degree. This is in Israel when you say diploma studies. But when you speak about diploma studies in Germany or in Poland, these are the degree studies. So even the terminology, you need to know the language, because you do not understand the language. Now, our vice president, which is entitled rector here in Israel, said, I have to go to a rector meeting. But a rector meeting in Europe is a president's meeting, because a rector in Germany and other places is a president. So the terminology of higher education is very much embedded in academic cultures of each nation state. And this is part, I think, of the huge challenge of the Bologna, to harmonize, to learn about, to understand, to know what it is that if in Italy somebody gets a doctorate, it's a first degree, and doctorandum in other places is not a doctorate, and you really have to study it. So, about globalization, I will not say a lot because I have here, and I can speak about it more than 20 minutes and more than an hour. But really, globalization is a force more powerful than industrialization, urbanization, and secularization combined. And I really feel that the Bologna process is exactly about that, to try to move higher education systems that are embedded very much in national cultures to operate in a global landscape, which is different. They have to change their definitions, their target populations, the programs that they offer, the accreditation. This is a huge, huge challenge. The president rector of the Universitat Oberta de Catalonia published last year a book in which I also contributed a chapter, and it was first published in Catalan, then Spanish, then English, and about turning universities upside down. And turning universities upside down, this is the title of the book, and my article there was on the challenge of moving from national really systems to a global landscape. And I think we are experiencing it. We are very young in this field because we only started to move really in the last years. But even Europe that wanted to end the process in 2010, and now the kind of more 10 years, are still experiencing a lot of difficulties. Marek, for example, in Poland, I had a discussion with a colleague called Leszek Kozanowicz from Wrocław University about the habilitation, which you still have also in Germany. And I was trying to say, why do you need it? You have professors getting into university when they are 45, 50 years old because of this habilitation. Just know that we here in Israel do not have habilitation thanks to Albert Einstein. Because really, because he was on the committees that established the Hebrew University, and he advised very strongly. We took everything from the Humboldt idea of universities, but not to adopt the habilitation tradition of Germany, and we didn't, luckily enough. So, I asked him, why do you still need in Poland habilitation? He said, if we are going to abolish it, the reputation and the rank of our professors will go down. Then I told him, you know, I studied at Stanford University. There is no habilitation. And there is Harvard and Princeton and Yale and so many other universities that do not have habilitation. They are leading research universities. So the reputation and recognition of professors are really not linked to the habilitation tradition. But still, I know that the Max Planck Institute, the research Max Planck Institute, somehow circumvented the habilitation tradition, and they grant now in 29, as far as I know, graduate research schools, doctorates that are with no habilitation and more the American system. But still, people believe so much in their own traditions, even here in Israel. When I discuss with some of my colleagues that we exaggerate,
no, it's okay.
I was thinking that I'm already over. Exaggerate about the requirements of some of the master degrees. They say, no, but if I suffered and I studied 3 or 4 years and my professors were so strict with me doing this master degree, how can I now allow 1 or 2 years to finish them? This is somehow the feeling. I did it that way, and it's less if somebody is going to do it in a different way. So I really believe that the globalization and the Bologna process are about that, to learn about cultures and to take the best out of them that is suitable for your own country and for your own tradition. Now I'm going to jump, because I can speak about global university many diverse degrees, not this. You know about the Bologna, so you don't need it. Now I go directly to the challenges of the Bologna process to Israel and to the prospect that we for the future. First of all, the first challenge is accreditation. Johanna, you probably will be surprised, but there is no common academic currency of accreditation between Israeli higher education institutions. For 70 years, I was the head of the accreditation committee at my university. You have various names, like the academic currency of a ECTS or unit in America, non-existent in Israel. You have units, semester hours, yearly hours, various things, and you have to balance, first of all, the terms in Israel, not with ECTS, but in Israel. So I think it's very important, if you say borrow something, it's very important for us, because it will give an incentive to create a common academic currency here in Israel between institutions. Accreditation between universities. it does not go without saying that in Israel, sometimes, not because of the reputation or the status of a university, you can study, and it also depends on departments and on schools in any given university. There is no university policy in most universities, except I think the Technion and also Weizmann Institute and Open Universities that is kind of has a policy of an institution about accreditation. So you can study in psychology department at Hebrew University and go to Tel Aviv University, and they will not acknowledge your studies, not because it's not kind of at the same level, but because this is their decision. That they do not acknowledge any studies that have been conducted outside Tel Aviv University. So it's also a chance for us, not only to collaborate with Paris University or with Scotland, but to collaborate between Hebrew and Tel Aviv University, between Hebrew and Haifa University. Accreditation of colleges. I know that I was in the United States a few weeks ago for 3 weeks, and I talked with my dear colleague Sheldon Rothblatt from Berkeley University, and he told me he was one of the people that belonged to the program in 1995, and he asked me, you are still struggling about what is the meaning of university in a college in Israel? So it's something that really goes for years, and this Friday we are going to have a meeting in Tel Aviv University, Bashar, about a special social contract between universities and colleges. So really debating it. In United States, there is no difference between school, college, university. You have many universities that are lawyers and some colleges and so on. But here in Israel, the university is a special entity and colleges are something different. So it's also a time to talk about it, because such, like if you take the Carnegie Foundation advancement categories, you have, I think, 34 different categories for higher education institutions. So it's kind of not colleges versus universities. You have so many different kinds of higher education institutions, huge. In my field of open universities, you have universities that teach more than 1 million students, like in Thailand, in China, in India, and you have some universities that teach less than 1,000 students. So in a way, the differences are really huge, and you cannot kind of combine everything in the distinction between a university and a college, which is very important for the Israeli tradition. Accreditation of tertiary education. When I was in the committee, we acknowledged some of the tertiary education, which do not lead to like practical engineers and all. And some of the universities acknowledge, some of the other universities do not acknowledge at all. You can study 2-3 years as a practical engineer and not get any point at the Technion or the Hebrew University, but get half of the degree at another university. So you see, it's really an incentive for us to make a little bit order in our own higher education system, which is quite small, but still many things still have to be settled in this system. This was part of the dream 20 years ago. And experiential learning, not to say anything about it. Only few institutes acknowledge experiential learning. If you do not have a diploma, if you do not have grades, if you cannot show something, how many hours you have studied, you're just a pilot or something else, no way you are going to get credits for experiential learning. So it's something also that is a challenge that's standing for the Israeli higher education. עוד 5 דקות? Okay. I will try to do it. Now, teaching in English. Also a huge issue in Israel. When Israel was established, even before Israel was established, there was a huge debate because the German professors wanted to teach in the Technion in German. But because of the birth of the new language, the rebirth of the old language, actually, it was so important to insist teaching in Hebrew. But now in the global world that we live in, there is no way that we can offer our courses and attract students and faculty from other countries that they will study Hebrew. So now more and more universities, in this meeting in Haifa, the rector of University of Haifa said that in the next 10 years, they have a plan of offering 50 master degree programs in English. So it is starting right now, but it is starting. You have heard about the initiative of the Technion and Cornell University that now combined forces. They are going to be established in Roosevelt Island near Manhattan, a very good place, offer graduate degrees, obviously in English. And I believe that this is going to lead also to a movement to enable more collaborative degrees with universities outside Israel. There were such collaborative degrees, but at a certain point, the Council for Higher Education decided that it's not a good idea. So they did almost accept Kellogg-Recanati program in MBA and some others, few programs in Israel. They are almost non-collaborative programs. This is, again, a huge challenge, because collaborative programs, the whole idea of Erasmus Mundus and all this, is exactly about this. So growing programs in English in universities and colleges. Restructuring the graduate degrees. This is something that I talk about more than 20 years. I write about it. Again, the master level studies, we have to reduce it to 1 or 2 years. I did my master degree in Israel 2 years with a thesis, 3 years. I came to Stanford, they acknowledged it as only 1 year, because it's 1 year that leads to a PhD. We have to think about, rethink this whole master degree programs. In Israel, it started, but not enough. It has to proceed. Structural doctoral studies. Now, in the internet, I don't know if my Israeli colleagues follow it, there is, I think, already 2 months that people, doctoral students, are speaking in the internet about the problematics of the doctoral programs, mainly in social studies and humanities, because they are more structured in the sciences, in exact sciences and in the natural sciences. Students are left alone when they do the PhD. They have to knock on many doors in order to find a professor that will accept and agree to be their supervisor. And then they can drag it for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Not that they study so much during these years, because they work, because it's not structured enough. So the whole master level and structured doctoral degrees are a huge issue that we have to think about here in Israel. And I think that the Bologna framework of these 3 stages is going to give also an incentive to consider it more seriously. I'm almost finished. Collaboration in teaching between Israeli higher education institutions, very important. We do not do it so much. We tried to do something with Tel Aviv University, Open University. It didn't work so well because there are not many incentives to do collaborative programs in fields that you do not have so many students, and it can be wonderful if you mobilize the best forces from several universities and offer a wonderful degree. It exists in very few fields, and I think it's going to extend. So this is, again, a challenge that we have with universities abroad, like Erasmus Mundus, and also with the corporate world. Stanford has a degree with Volkswagen University, and it's okay. So you can also, once there were many more collaborative ventures with the corporate world, and somehow they kind of stopped operating, and I think now people are talking more that it's very important to enhance the collaborative ventures between the corporate world and universities. The prospects of the almost finished. The prospects of the Bologna process. Again, being part of a global system, which is very important for us. By the way, the Israeli scholars are very much encouraged to be part of a global system in research from the very start. Many people are quite astonished when they hear that for every year that I work as a professor or lecturer, I'm entitled for 2 months of sabbatical, which are accumulated. I don't have to ask my president. I kind of have the right to go on sabbatical. So they are very much encouraged to go on sabbaticals for research purposes, but not so much for teaching. So being part of a global system, enriching the range of programs if you are collaborating with other countries, enriching the academic faculty, and also enriching the students' experience. Future universities is something that also is an important issue, but since...
I'm not
no?
saying anything.
Few minutes? Okay. I will say something about future universities. There was a study about future universities. I have a keynote about future universities. I took the main things about it and what is relevant for Bologna process and also for Israel. They're all over the world. One of the things that is quite astonishing is the growing private sector. In Poland, 400 higher education institutions. Some countries in the Far East, 90% of their higher education is private. So it's something that we have to consider how we deal with privatization. And I know that Marcus Ruff from the Council of Higher Education approached me to give materials about private higher education in public universities, which is also an issue. Like Hong Kong University has 23,000 students, but has 150,000 students outside the academic programs, and mainly private, and they get money from these students. Luckily enough, Hong Kong, they control the English language and they control the Chinese language. So they have a huge target population, potential target population, and they exploit it for revenues that do not come from the government. Public sector, obviously, all universities have to find other funds. I spoke with the president of a private institute in Warsaw on computer science. He told me that 50% of his operating budgets are coming from various European Union funds. That he succeeds, he has 3 people submitting proposals. He submitted 38 proposals, got 7, and it funds half of his operating budget. So it's also something that is also kind of an incentive. A growing differentiation of higher education institutions, we talked about it. And the people that write about the future university, the global universities, speak about universities that have up to 30%, like in Herzliya, I think. 30%? 25. So you're almost reaching. 30% of international students, 30% of international scholars, and also lifelong learning, which is going to be growing numbers of students that will not be traditional students. And I think this is the last one. Research will be conducted within international consortia and frameworks, not only within institutions. It's done already, language of instruction. There is a primacy of the English language. Once in UNESCO, I said there was George Haddad, who was responsible for the division of higher education, and I told him that English has become the lingua franca of the academic world. He was so much offended. He said French is still an internationally important language, and so it's the lingua franca of the academic world, no question about it. And the growing marketization of programs. I don't have time to talk about this, and we talked already. Thank you very much for your attention.